truth.
Few times, but I think me and Brock get along because he doesn't expect to change my mind and I don't expect to change his, and we can have a gentleman's disagreement, as it were, even though he thinks I'm just completely nuts, and the same is true in reverse. Dividing up the nation, to me, based on values, would create more problems than it solves. That's the easiest way that I can...
It's actually a thoughtful bullet point.
I mean, the lines on the map are arbitrary, but at least you can see a line on a map. When it comes to separating people by values, where are those lines at, Brock? You argue in your video that we basically just want different things out of life. And as the hippie in the group, I have to politely disagree. It's obviously true that everybody does want different things to a certain degree. But we all sleep under the same stars. We all breathe the same air. We depend on the same resources. We all want prosperity for ourselves and a better future for our inheritors. We all want those things. So from my point of view, it only makes sense that we try to get along as best we can, irrespective of whatever sincere, strong disagreements we might have. Because we have so much more that unites us than we do that separates us. And to put all of our focus on the issues that separate us, what does that say about us? What does that say about us as individuals and as a society if we decide to say, you know what, I can't get along with you just because you have different ideas to me, so off over there behind that arbitrary line on the map that I'm going to say is yours.
Paul, some thoughtful stuff, actually. You seem to be taking the lens and sort of broadening it into like a panoramic view with your comments, because obviously I know we all need the food pyramid. We all need basic human needs. We all need companionship. You know, we all need an environment that's healthy. All these things you reference, I don't disagree with in any way, shape, or form. So in that respect, I suppose we're in complete agreement. I'm referring strictly to values. It's all about values. You know, that frustrates me about the political dialogue, the way it's sort of performed on the kabuki theater stage, distractions and deflections. It's about values. I mean, we should vote according to values. We should talk about values. We should open our ears and listen to each other's explanation of why we have the values we have. And if you're honest, that's like the last thing we do. So I think values are actually everything. You also mentioned arbitrary lines on a map. I suppose this is a very John Lennon-esque sort of view of the world, but I don't agree with it. Language, border, culture, this is what makes up countries. I think the fruits of this is distinction, makes life interesting. What is a nation if not for borders, language, and culture? I know there's a huge attempt from modern day, I don't know, Unitarians or leftists or, you know, enlightened, sort of know better than everybody else, that whole crowd, to just, you know, poo-poo borders and to poo-poo lines on a map. What frustrates me about that, of course, is that they benefit from all these lines on a map. People that protect them, the economic differences between one side of the line and the other. I mean, these things are all just pie in the sky comments. Kumbaya, some might say. So, I mean, yeah, we're just going to disagree on whether or not that's real arbitrary. I think it's rather important, actually, much more important than maybe we're making it seem. I think Europe's playing that out as they're having a clash of civilization. It's not because one human being is better than the other human being, but because the people that are infiltrating them, mass immigration, do not share their values, do not share their civil rights perspective, do not share their human rights perspective, do not share their perspective on liberty, free speech, on and on and on and on. Islam is growing like black mold in the globe because there's something fundamentally wrong with their values, and the way those values are implementing themselves in modern society. So yes, values are important. It's not just willy-nilly, it's not just roll your eyes, they're substantive. In fact, I think they're the most important thing.
Countries like the United States were meant, I think, in its inception for different states to have their own distinct sense of identity.
I agree.
To a certain extent, I think that's true in America. If you go to Alaska, it's not like California.
I agree with this too.
California is not like Wyoming, not like Maine. Maine's not like Florida. You know what I mean? I mean, so every place has its own character. People have their own idiosyncrasies, and that's a good thing.
I agree.
The most beautiful thing about America, and again, I'm showing my hippie colors here, but to me is its diversity of not only ethnicities, but also lifestyles and outlooks on life. You know, we should draw our strength from these differences. You know, understanding, as you and I do, Brock, that it is possible for people of good intent to strongly disagree about important issues.
You and I are of like mind in this respect. I love that the United States of America is as different as can be, and it's true geographically too. I've been almost everywhere. It's very true. I think it's very exciting. I think it's very cool. I love that aspect of life. I've been all through Europe. I've been all through Asia. I've been through the Middle East. I love this type of thing. And I also agree that the states were meant to be laboratories of ideas. And of course, if it wasn't a Leviathan federal government trying to be the blob and grow infinitely and ever expanding in their totalitarian desires and power lust, I think it would actually be much more healthy and it would actually work. And there's a great irony, of course, now, because since Trump's in office, all of a sudden these leftists have seen the light and they're advocating for states' rights because they see that as an effective way of pushing back on some policies that they don't agree with. And I would actually agree with them in this respect. It wasn't in vogue when Barack Obama was in office, when the federal government wanted to push social engineering, when the federal government wanted to legislate left-wing, Johnny-come-lately morality on the rest of the country. Essentially, when the federal government wanted to legislate leftism on the rest of the country. So we didn't hear much talking about states' rights then. But this is all what I'm talking about. I mean, there is no room for this anymore. So if everybody agreed that states could sort of play things out as they wish, less and less is that the case. It's just more and more of a federal growth. It seems like you were to some extent willing to admit that the states were laboratories for democracy, laboratory for ideas, economic ideas, social ideas, etc. Problem is, from my perspective, social engineering leftists are not content to have that be the case. It's conform. It is capitulate or cease to exist. It is condone. That is all that is acceptable to the left. There isn't differences. The things that the leftist social engineers and the classic liberals once fought against, they now are. The social engineering mob now demands that you conform and condone their new morality. That's just true. There's evidence of it all over the place. I had a back and forth, which I actually quite enjoyed, but Bionic Dan seemed to get very, very annoyed at even having the conversation, which is a shame. But I appreciated her thoughts. I got a lot out of them. She just doesn't see it that way. And it's kind of, I think, illuminating and fruitful in a conversation where we both articulate different sides of the coin, and it turns out the fears are very, very similar. I think Bionic Dance's fear is that some right-wing evangelical theocrat is going to like drop the Thor's hammer of aggression on her lifestyle. Where the fruit of that is, or where the evidence of that is in America, I'll never know. Certainly in the last 10 years, you're not finding evidence of that. I mean, the level of openness towards lifestyle in this country is something to be admired, but it's never led to rest. It's just pound, pound, pound. At first it was acceptance, then it was let bygones be bygones. Now it's condone. And here's the line too far, because they're not going to condone. They're very, very real values-based beliefs that shape people's views on sexual identity, behavior, right, wrong, morality, immorality. It'd be a fascinating conversation to have, but maybe not for this particular video. You're not going to get this portion of society to condone. And make no mistake, that is what social engineers want. They will fire you. They will come after your job. They will come after your business. It is straight up thuggery. That's what it's become. And by the way, for the social engineers listening to this, beware. Because people will get sick of that. Just like they've tired of the feminist Nazi-like behavior, just like they've tired of the social justice warriors and the political correct police, people are sick of that stuff. It's too much. It's too far. Just live your life. Stop forcing people to bow their knee to what you deem as whatever. Because that's not going to happen. And that's what I'm talking about. That there's not enough room there. That there's not enough grace there. That there's not enough open-mindedness, quite frankly, to allow for the fact that people aren't going to agree. It doesn't mean they hate you as a person. It doesn't mean they want to harm you or strip you of anything. They don't agree. They don't agree. Shocking. It's not a profanity. It's not a threat. It's just that. It's that they don't agree. But for the social engineering left, that's not enough. It's my contention. I think I can defend it, maybe for another video.
And to abandon that hope, to just resign ourselves and say, you know what, I just can't get along with you because you think differently to me, I think condemns the future to a pretty dark, bleak, hopeless, lonely place for the world to become. And I don't want to see that world for my grandchildren. No one is always right. No one is perfect.
I agree.
Right? No point of view has all the answers.
I agree with that too.
Not mine. Sometimes the other guy might be right.
I agree.
And the only way we can find that out is by having dialogue, which I'm glad you acknowledged.
All right, I got the funk. This is one of the reasons I really, really have always loved your channel. I don't disagree with any of that stuff. I agree. I long for that. And my argument would be that was classic liberalism. I consider myself to be a classic liberal, by the way. That was classic liberalism. It was these ideas right here. It allowed room for disagreement. In fact, that was healthy. There was a dialogue. There was a place for dialogue. You didn't villainize your opponent, all those things. I think what we face today, in my opinion, is that people like myself, conservatives, when we think of liberal-minded people like yourself, Paul, like the left, like Democrats, we think of them as people that are wrong about things. Their ideas are wrong. Their economic ideas are wrong. Their ideas about social engineering are wrong. Their ideas about allocation of resources are wrong. Stuff like that. But leftists, and that's what they are today. There are no more classic liberals in the Democratic Party. They're leftists. They're flying further left, even after a bloodbath election, which they came out the wrong side of. They don't think of people like me as being wrong. They think of us as being evil. They think of us as pond scum. They think of us as subhuman. They call us haters. They call us bigots. They look at our humanity as less than. This is just evidenced everywhere. I think the best evidence of this is the last gentleman that posted a video. I'm just too beneath him to speak of. You can see it in his face, I'm just too beneath him. There's shark poop, then there's whale poop, then there's like the bottom feeders of the ocean, all their fecal matter, then way beneath that is some conservative Christian like Brock. I can't even respond to Brock. This is evidence everywhere. In the lexicon of the left, this is just evidenced everywhere. You can't have elasticity. You can't have back and forth. Thus, you can't have self-correction. Thus, what does that end in? Violence. All I'm saying is this is an idea that I had to try to alleviate that violence. Because ultimately, if you're listening to this and you're somebody that really believes in left-wing ideas, say social, economic, so on and so forth, I'm saying I personally would love to see those things play out because I have a very, very strong inclination that they will not play out the way we're sold every election year. When Democrats speak of their economic plans, of their social plans, of their plans to fight poverty, I think they're flawed ideas. So I think they will fail. And the reason I'm a conservative is because I think conservative ideas will succeed. I think they'll succeed in growing wealth. I think they'll succeed in alleviating poverty. I think they'll succeed in changing inner cities. Those ideas will succeed in schools, so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is these geographic sort of value-based carve-outs could be what the states were meant to be, but aren't allowed to be anymore because we're sort of federal top-down run from elitists, and I feel like that's not going to change, and I don't think even the citizenry want it to change, largely because they have a complete and total ignorance of the Constitution and the relationship between the governing and the governed and how tentative that relationship should be, and we're not serfs, we're not slaves, so on and so forth. Anyway, loved your video, got that funk, thoughtful, insightful, would have liked it to be much longer. Appreciate your response.
MSNBC is a crack house for intravenous idiocy. He's your daily leftist detox counselor, your fearless host, Brock Lawley.